Take another episode. This is season 2, episode 3. Actually, we are about halfway through season 2 here. With today we got Mary Oliver.
We do indeed. A bit of
Yeah,
a neo-romantic.
yeah. Something I read an interesting article about her. It was in Yale Review, and it had kind of like a little quip. It was and why hasn't she seemed to like why doesn't she understand that modernism is happening, or like something like that,
Mm,
like how has she ignored modernism? So yeah, a little bit of a neo-romantic.
right, right. Mary. She almost sort of transcends the self, and if we can see
Mm-hmm,
modernism as basically being like about the self.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Nature has a strange way of sort of putting you in it, as opposed to one
mm-hmm.
thinking that their ego kind of fills up all the space of the universe.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, we're kind of hitting some of the main themes of her poetry, right off the bat here: nature and the ego, slash the self. And that's, one of those things. It seems like she's constantly trying to kind of get away from herself, in
Hmm.
her poetry, or even other people. Sometimes there are other people in her poems, but oftentimes it's um, it's kind of one woman in the world,
Hmm.
and so uh, that is a little bit of a romantic kind of thing, because she mostly is encouraging us to get out into the world, and just kind of like be alone with your
Right.
thoughts, not even with your thoughts, more so like with the sounds and the sights, of the world around us.
Yeah. And also like she also has a lot of her poetry kind of reminds me of the Tao a bit, because it'll
Mm-hmm.
have that second, the second person you.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be a
Yeah.
lot of you this and you
Right.
that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That you, yeah, that you is sometimes kind of like almost like a cosmic, sort of you,
Mm,
um, which is kind of an interesting, sometimes like people write from like a cosmic eye, sort of prophetic eye, and she's kind of more communing with a like a sort of a cosmic you,
mhm.
rather than herself being this sort of kind of, that's kind of going along with her whole, getting away from the self thing.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting to see like the self as maybe like society, you know.
Mm, mm,
There's a bit of echoes in the poetry of sort of Li Bai. We talked about Li Bai back there in
mhm,
season 1.
mhm,
And the society was this place where things were sort of more rigid, or sort of more you had to be a bit more meticulous, but through the use of alcohol, through the use of nature, he was able to sort of free himself from that. And so with Mary Oliver, we don't have the alcoholism, but we do have the just the idea that nature is, you can sort of become more than yourself, transcend the self through experience in nature.
mm. Yeah, there's, also with the simplicity of her writing, which I think often makes it seem like there's not like a lot of artistry going on. But I could see some parallels with, when you have those translations of, like a lot of Chinese or even, Japanese poets, where, because we're translating it into English, we're basically getting kind of like the philosophy without the artistry. There's still some
Mm,
artistry there, but you kind of miss, like with when we went into those Li Bai poems, remember, like many of them were like 4 characters by 4 characters,
hmm.
those, and then, but of course it wasn't 4 words by 4 words,
Right,
you know,
right.
so you kind of you lose a little bit of that sometimes, and
Hmm.
that was and then so you kind of have this kind of like almost plain spoken philosophical, little something aphoristic sort of poem, and that's many of her poems are kind of like that. They're
Right, right.
um
They
they
do take on that sort of Eastern
mhm
sage. I mean, we've already said transcendental, but
mhm
it's about taking a step outside of yourself, beyond
yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
And some people is there's been recapitulations of this throughout human history, but
mhm
and even last episode we were talking about Bukowski.
Right.
Bukowski, transcended himself through vice,
Hmm.
through drugs,
Yeah.
with some the Chinese poet Li Bai using alcohol to transcend himself and nature. So, now we have someone, Mary Oliver, who's
Yeah.
kind of like Walt Whitman and
Mm.
seeing nature as the the transcendental object.
One difference though with Bukowski and Mary Oliver is that Bukowski is very much like he's not getting away from people. Although he does have
Mm,
poems about being alone and how, at the end it'll just be him in the four walls.
hmm.
But he was more of a man of the people in that, he's getting out there at the racing track, or he's getting
Right,
in the bars, and he's sleeping with women, and doing just kind of getting in the muck and the mire of the people, where Mary Oliver's more, she has friends, she has
mm,
lovers, she'll talk about those occasionally in her poems, but mostly it's she's getting away from, kind of people. But there
right.
is still like sort of a transcendence in both of them. Because even though like Bukowski's, in the muck and mire with people, he's sort of kind of transcending the restraints, the societal restraints, even in his interactions with people. Um, where,
Right.
yeah, with Oliver, it's like she's got to get away from them to be able to do that.
Right. And it's interesting where people sort of find that transcendence. Bukowski, we could say, like, through transgression.
Mm,
He's almost transcended himself.
mm,
In that's kind of the trope of, like, the nasty old man. The
yeah.
old man,
Mm-hmm.
he's sort of like, down and, like, kind of low brow a bit,
Mm-hmm.
but in a
Yep.
way he sort of transcends himself. He transcends his age and his sort of ugliness to be something almost kind of wryly admired.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But once we get to Mary Oliver, we do have this sage like Eastern,
Mm-hmm.
um the wisdom of the wisdom of the wind in the leaves, the
Yeah.
wisdom of the water on the rocks. And
Mm-hmm.
that is
Mm-hmm.
where Mary Oliver finds her transcendence.
Yeah. And maybe it's telling that we've spent maybe half of this time talking about other people, other poets, when talking about Mary
Mm,
Oliver. Even when talking about Mary Oliver, like you want to talk about somebody else,
right,
just as
right.
just as she doesn't really want to talk about herself too much, or get,
No,
and
that's a good,
yeah.
very good point, because even some of the feminist critiques of Mary Oliver
Hmm.
often mention other women, as because the critique of Mary Oliver is she aligns women too much with nature.
Mm,
And that, like,
okay.
a lot of feminists have had this critique that she's almost like, she's almost not sort of stand almost is framed that she's almost like not standing up for herself, or not sort of putting herself, not centering herself, I think is the term that I've heard sort of these people use, that she's sort of centers nature. And it's a bit, they consider it a bit dangerous to sort of associate women with nature. And so instead of
Right. Yeah,
they think there's a
artificiality.
yeah, they think there's a bit more, agency in
Hmm.
women being associated with their ego. Like, if
Right.
women associate
Sure.
themselves with their ego, there will be more
Yes.
agency.
Yeah, that
But
sounds like the ego.
but Mary Oliver flies in the face of that.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
why, it makes sense that we can better understand Mary Oliver through sometimes comparing and contrasting her with others.
Yeah.
Even her critics follow that schema.
Right. And going along with that, yes, there's feminist critiques of her. There's also she she didn't get a college degree. She's
Mm.
sort of outside of academia, kind of like Bukowski.
Mhm.
And so she, and because of the simplicity of her work, she's kind of sort of has some scorn from the intelligentsia.
Mm.
She's a bit more of like a, like a pop poet, kind of less similar to Billy Collins, but different.
Mhm.
We have like a little bit of a theme here that we've been kind of going these
Right.
last three. She's certainly a poet of the people, But for a lot of people, they feel like she's more of she's like an everyday common man, and
Mm-hmm.
not in necessarily like the best way. Some people, um, you know, just it's like middle brow. It's not low brow. Bukowski's low brow. She's more middle brow because it's not high brow. She's kind of, you know. Look, I gave my mom a box set of her poems for Mother's Day.
Mm.
The bookstore when I did that, they're like, man, we should have. The girl checking out small bookstore, I think Book Nerd here. No, actually, it wasn't Book Nerd. It was another one. Um, my apologies to the bookstore. So, but the girl when she was checking me out, she's like, "Man, we really should have bought more of these. We did not expect so many people to buy them for Mother's Day, because I
Oh
got like the
wow,
second to last one." So,
that's interesting.
um,
And
that
Mary
take
Oliver is
yeah,
the perfect Mother's Day poet.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, so she's
Yeah.
accessible, and I think a lot of the beauty in her work is the subtlety in it. It would is my opinion.
And feminist critiques be damned. I think there's something beautiful about Mary Oliver's poetry. I mean,
Hmm.
and I think there is some I think, we can go back to the ancient Greeks, don't want to bring too much mythology into it, but there is something about women in nature. There's
Hmm.
the Diana, the
Right.
the sort of person who, away from the gaze of men, away from the gaze of society, sort of becomes more than themselves.
Hmm.
um
Yeah,
yeah, so I think,
absolutely.
yeah, I think there's
Yeah.
something beautiful there.
Hmm. No, 100%. And I think what better way to illustrate that than to maybe share a couple poems?
Right,
Maybe
get
you
into
brought
it.
one. Maybe you brought one that you'd like to talk about specifically.
But and also I would like to say Mary
Yeah.
Oliver, she's from the Cleveland area,
Yep.
just like
Maple Heights.
yourself.
Right. Yep. Shout out
So
to Cuyahoga County.
yeah, so maybe that has something to do with this middle brow area that she's
Could
able
be.
to, this middle brow niche that she's able to fill. I noticed the Midwest kind of seems, not only is it in the middle of the country, but it often occupies like a middle ground between like maybe the South and the coastal elite.
Mhm. Right,
And
right. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Right, that sort of plain spoken kind of, meat and potatoes. That's sort of, her poetry is a little kind of meat and potatoes in some regard.
right. But these meat and potatoes definitely slap, as the kids
Mhm.
say.
Yeah.
But without further ado, let's get into some of these poetry. I guess I'll go first. I will be reading Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. This is one of her a famous poem, one of
Mhm.
her, I guess I could say, more famous poems.
Mhm.
But you know, it's I do enjoy this poem, and I do think that this poem contains things that are, definitely archetypal of, of her work. And so I will go ahead and get into it. We have Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. So that's Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. Some of your first impressions, Jess?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that this one is, I mean, it's possibly her most famous, or most well known. It's one that is so this is one that you're gonna see, and for anyone who's watching who maybe isn't familiar with Mary Oliver, you might recognize some of these lines, like "You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves," you know, or that you do not have to be good. These are, um, on social media, like, these things are, like, reposted, sometimes by, um, they're a little bit,
Like kind of like diary accounts or like journal
yeah, things like
accounts.
that. Yeah, things like that. And so, I think it'd be easy to sort of dismiss this poem. Um, if you I think it's just easy to dismiss this poem for people who might want to like stick their nose up at, maybe Mary Oliver, or, the kind of, it's almost a little bit sort of moralistic. But I think there is some, there is some beauty here. There is some kind of truth, and sometimes when things are so plain, they can sort of be taken for granted. I think that's this for this poem. It's saying, hey, you don't have to be good. You don't have to walk on your knees. A lot of us want to be told that we have to walk on our knees for 100 miles through the desert. It would make us feel like maybe something was worthwhile or something is happening, and that's not always the case.
Right, right. There is something about people chastising themselves or
Mm,
punishing themselves
mm,
and out of to so that they can be relevant.
mhm.
Um
Yeah.
and that's why I feel like a lot of Mary Oliver's work, it takes on this Eastern quality.
Mm,
I oftentimes think of Eastern, religious text or Eastern sort of philosophy as being a almost like they have an interesting way of apologizing for the body, like the animal qualities of us, like the sex and the violence. They almost can find apologies for that while still understanding that we can sort of transcend the body. So, in the line, you only have to let the soft animal of your body loves what it loves. It's almost saying that, look, we are sort of these, we have this animal quality, we have these animal natures, and it's never going to be done away with. It's never going to be sort of gotten away from, but we can still sort of rise higher than some people would, those that would think that we have to crawl on our hands and knees through the desert, would have us believe.
mm,
And the image that perfectly encapsulates this is the geese flying high, because the geese are animals and birds are great for this. For thousands of years birds have occupied this motif, but they're, because birds are animals, they eat, they mate, they do everything that animals do, but they also fly high. There's something about the bird that can be high in the air and sort of you know almost transcend itself. And just like there's something about flying birds that are akin to mountains and rivers and these sort of things of the natural world. There's a beauty to the natural world. We don't have to repent or lament the natural world.
mm. Right. Yeah, and that's, also, meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air
Mm,
are heading home again. You know, it's almost like, there's that saying, it's, before enlightenment, you carry, what is it? Chop wood and carry water.
right,
After
right.
enlightenment, chop wood and
Chop,
carry water.
right.
Right? They're high in the clean blue air, kind of free of all manner, clean, clear of everything, and yet they're heading home again.
Right.
They don't stay there. They
Right
can't.
there. Yes, yeah, yeah. There's a that process, that cycle.
Mhm, mhm. And another thing that I like is, you only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. It's like there's no, um, it's more about just allowing yourself. And coming right after that, tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Right? Like, tell me about despair. Don't tell me about like the despair of other people,
Mm,
or ills around the world, or something that you saw or you heard about. Tell me about
right,
your despair, and I'll tell
right.
you mine.
And that's another thing. Like I think that the that despair line is connected to that soft animal
Mm-hmm.
line. Like
Mm-hmm.
even though
Right.
despair is sort of an intangible thing, like humans experiencing
Mm-hmm.
despair,
Mhm.
There's something, like, people might even wallow in despair, or
Right.
allow despair to sort of muck them up, or sort of be
Mhm.
covered in despair.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
through the, tell me about your despair, I will tell you mine. This is almost like the first little taste of transcendence we get in the poem.
Mm.
There's something about that small connection that almost is allowing the animal of our body to love what it loves.
Mm. Mm.
And in humans, we relate to each other, we connect with each other,
Right.
and there is a vulnerability in that connection.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, there's kind of a recognition of, transcendence through the body. You
Mm.
can't, there's transcendence through recognizing the body rather than trying to act like, you know,
Right,
getting away
right,
from it, you know? And
right.
I also like soft animal, it's like it's
Mm,
malleable,
okay.
sort of has this plasticity, it's soft, like it's, there's no, it's not a hard exterior shell. We're not getting down into the bones or, soft, mushy. I don't know, not maybe mushy might be too much, but,
Hmm.
something that can be pliable.
Right.
Um, yeah. And yeah, meanwhile, the world goes on.
And there's and this, and I keep bringing up religious texts because just some of these themes and motifs, they've just occurred, like especially in the Bible. You know, tell me about yours and I'll tell you about mine. We have one level of transcendence, but then we also have the geese flying high as another level of transcendence. It just reminds me of, love your neighbor with all your heart, or love your neighbor as you love yourself, and love God with all your heart. We have a
Hmm.
horizontal transcendence, loving your neighbor with all your heart, and tell me about your despair and I'll tell you mine. Then we have a vertical transcendence with the
Hmm.
geese and the clean blue air,
Hmm.
and the loving God with all your heart.
Right.
So these are sort of the dimensions. We're kind of covering all bases with the wild
Mhm.
geese.
Right.
We're covering all the bases of transcendence.
Well, and I think it's easy to kind of skip through this, but from there, when we talk about tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine, that line. But then, meanwhile, the world goes on. And then we get into this imagery that's, sort of easy to just kind of like, yeah, okay, yeah, the landscapes, the prairies, the deep trees, the mountains, what, right? Yeah, no, I know all this sort of imagery of the world, sure. But it's kind of making this connection because we've already connected with our animal nature, right?
Hmm.
We're making a connection with our animal nature. Now the world, we are connecting our body with the world of the body.
Right.
Seeing the connection between us and the world. And then so just as the world continues to go on, you know, so too must we.
Mm. No, and that's why I like the repetition of the meanwhile. I think we have meanwhile
Mhm.
three times.
Yep.
It's placing us
Mhm.
within the world.
Mhm.
Even though we were able to transcend, we're also still within.
Yep.
So while we have this moment of transcendence between the I and the you of the
Mhm.
poem, meanwhile the world is continuing. The sun and the rain, they move across the land, the mountains, the rivers, and
Yep.
but we culminate in the wild geese heading home
Mhm.
again.
Right. Yep.
So and this is interesting. It's almost like the last bit of the poem frames this as almost like an offering, that this is being offered to you. It's almost like let those that have ears hear, or
Mhm.
the kingdom of heaven is nigh. Like,
Mhm.
it's almost offered to you. It's available to you.
Mhm.
It's a knock and the door will be opened kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
Um,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she says that whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination.
right.
We just have to accept the call almost.
Right. And that call and this dance of transcendence and lowliness and loneliness and being with someone, this entire dance announces our place in the family of things,
Mhm.
which is, I feel like, what a beautiful sort of salient line. Like,
Mhm.
this is the family of things. This is the way
Right.
things are. This You are a part of this world.
Mhm.
There's no one can sort of take you from this world.
Right.
N- You know,
Yeah.
we have our place in this world.
Yeah. Reminds me of Dr. Joseph Campbell, an interview that he did. I think at the one at um, George Lucas's home, where he says, instead of thinking of ourselves as being, basically like aliens,
Mm,
as being not a part of the world, rather think, ourselves as the earth. This is the mouth of the earth speaking. These are the ears of the earth hearing. And I feel like there's a similar sentiment between, kind of what he's saying there and what she's saying here, where, you are a part of the family of this world. Your
right.
body is similar to, and there's kind of this dichotomy that we have where, you have where the self, because there is loneliness, there's a recognition of
Hmm.
loneliness, there's a recognition of the individual. And yet, even as an individual, we are part of a collective.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. And then, I mean, that the and to take it back to the East again, so I feel like there's strains of Buddhism that consider acknowledging the ego in any way is a loneliness.
Mm,
The to acknowledge, to sort of focus on your sense of self is a loneliness. That is a type of loneliness. So, no
yeah.
matter how lonely, no matter how egocentric you have
Mm-hmm.
become,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
it is your imagination that can allow you to sort of expand beyond yourself. And your
Yeah.
imagination. In our time, we would use terms like imagination, but maybe in the past they might use terms like like reason, or you know um rationality. But there's something of our minds that allow us to, there's a way that we can sort of transcend ourselves. And even if we are, you know weak in some ways, even if we have our weaknesses, our animal nature, our loneliness, our need for this, our need for that.
Yeah. Still have to listen to the siren song of the world.
Right. Out,
Yeah.
hey, the
Sounds like you
city's
got an
alive.
emergency going on over there.
Is that me? I
Is it
thought that
you or
was
is it
I
me?
thought that was on your end in
I
those
have no
mean
idea.
Nashville
I have no
streets.
idea.
No,
Well, you do
I
have to be careful.
I live in a very quiet enclave.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. Well, the little insight, a little bit about us. James lives in the Triangle, which is one of the safest, most Manila places
Right,
in uh in the US.
right.
And
It,
but they think of Durham as being a dangerous place, and it's
well, I guess it has its rough spots, but
yeah,
you
right,
know,
yeah.
and I mean, even you live in Nashville, which does have its character, but it gets a little gritty sometimes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's funny. But I now I live on the west side now. I used to live in the east side, and
Mm,
that is the gritty place. I'm pretty well secluded now. On
okay,
the
tucked
west
off.
part of town. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
west part of town. So, but yeah, hey, I think that's a great poem though, Wild Geese too, to show that subtlety. Where
Hmm.
you could read that and just kind of move on.
Right,
And it's possible to just sort of be like, oh yeah, there's some platitudes there, but like nothing to really,
right.
that's all
The
it is,
the
just
the
platitudes.
I think the great poetry can be read on like several levels.
Right.
It like you can take it to any level. You can take it to religious places, almost even
Mhm.
political places,
Mhm.
entertainment play. Like it can work on so many levels.
Right. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Mary Oliver kind of reminds me of a bit of Emily Dickinson.
Yes.
Some of her poetry, you can just read it and be like, okay, that was nice. She
Right.
went on a wagon ride with death. Okay, and
Mhm.
you can
Right.
read several layers into it.
Yeah.
But
Same with Frost. I think
oh
any
yeah,
great American poet is in one way or another going to remind you of Dickinson and Frost. I don't know how you could get away from those 2.
especially nowadays, like in the
Mhm.
21st century. I
Right.
don't see how you can get away from them either.
Right. Yeah. 'Cause you could say the same for Billy Collins, I feel like.
Hmm. Right.
Well, cool. Well, hey, good one. Wild Geese.
All
Hopefully,
right.
yeah, hopefully if you've seen or read that before, you take something new from it.
And sharing your poem now.
Perfect. Yep. So no matter what, I have so I went and after I bought my mother that box set, I went and got one for myself.
Okay.
And it had Blue Horses in it as well as A Thousand Mornings and the rest of it's downstairs, but Dog Songs and um, forgive me for not remembering the third.
Did it
But
did the books overlap from the Mother's Day from the box set you got for your mom's?
same exact
Oh,
box set.
the same exact box.
I
Okay.
just went and got myself one like the next week.
Okay. All right. Hey, makes
And
sense.
right, yeah. And so I am going to read No Matter What.
All right.
No matter what the world claims, its wisdom always growing, so it's said. Some things don't alter with time. The first kiss is a good example, and the flighty sweetness of rhyme. No matter what the world preaches, spring unfolds in its appointed time. The violets open and the roses. Snow in its hour builds its shining curves. There's the laughter of children at play, and the wholesome sweetness of rhyme. No matter what the world does, some things don't alter with time. The first kiss, the first death, the sorrowful sweetness of rhyme. So you gave me first up on yours. You have any initial?
This is one of the most tastefully done rhyme schemes I've seen in a minute. I mean,
Hmm.
this is when the
Yep.
poet like really like takes it to a next level.
Yeah, that's a
you
yep.
you still have that rhythm, you still kind of
Hmm.
have a playfulness, a bounce, but
Hmm.
they're not tied to any sort of strict meter or any
Right.
sort of strict rhyme scheme. They sort of let it
Yeah.
they sort of let it develop.
Hmm.
And to rhyme with the word rhyme and
Hmm.
time,
Yep. I know.
man, this is meta. This is almost like
Hmm.
when Hamlet said the play is the thing that will
Yes.
reveal the content of the king.
Right.
Yeah, it's very meta. And it's sort of the way it sort of rejects the world, and it makes sense to know a little bit about the poet that you're reading,
Hmm.
because we would think that the world, she's Mary Oliver, we just talked about how much time she spends in nature.
Right.
So, what is the world to Mary Oliver? The world is something that claims, the world is something that preaches, the world is something that does, but
Hmm. Hmm.
as opposed to, nature is something that, from my last poem, nature is something that offers. Nature is something that, is available
Hmm. Hmm.
to everyone, and those are some of my first impressions.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I'm glad that one. The reason why I chose this poem is because I think again this one shows highlights the subtlety, um, and there is artistry here. And
Mm,
so, just like you mentioned, rhyming, using the word rhyme, the way that the way that the rhyme is in here, it is meta. She's like kind of making a comment, right? And I
hmm.
think with the world, that kind of goes to some religious imagery as well, where in Christianity, the world is sort of all the societal um kind of aspects of life, kind of the societal poles and the demands of society are
Hmm.
kind of represented by the world, where you have like the world and the flesh and these kinds of ideas. So you know and yeah, something that this poem reminds me of is it kind of reminds me of a villanelle,
Mm,
just because of there's something about the 3 stanzas. I know, Villanelle is not, it uses tercets, But there's something about that number 3 and the repeating refrains, and even how some of the refrains are changed a little bit, like, no matter what the world claims, no matter what the world preaches, no matter
Mm,
what the world does. But then I love how, in each stanza as well, we talk about time, right?
right.
Some things don't alter with time, but then spring unfolds in its appointed time. And then we come back to that some things don't alter with time. And it's sort of, it's that's almost sort of like this, kind of finalized, like we're kind of, I might be jumping ahead here, but we're kind of finalizing.
Mm,
It kind of like is like sinking in. Some things don't alter with time, right?
right.
But um, most with this poem, obviously, there's no set rhyme scheme. A lot of it, a lot of the lines are end stopped.
Mm,
In that first stanza, it's like mostly with commas. So it's not like a firm, hard end stop,
right.
you know, until the last line, which is, it's a sentence. These first two stanzas are both sentences. And the second stanza, it's the longest stanza, and there is some, kind of there's an enjambment, it kind of runs over, with that no matter what the world preaches, spring unfolds in its appointed time.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then, again we have some, commas, some end stops. Um but it's a little faster. And, something I love is how, um, in that first stanza, some things don't alter with time. And then, you get that flighty sweetness of rhyme, comes,
Mm,
2 lines afterwards, right? In
mm-hmm.
the second stanza, there's 4 lines in between, right?
Right.
It's that wholesome sweetness of rhyme. That's another refrain that, we have here, but, the sweetness is flighty, it's
Mm-hmm.
wholesome, right? And then, in the end, that the space in the lines is again sort of put squished together, um, because we have just 4, it's the shortest. No matter what the world does, some things don't alter with time. But this is 3 uh sentences, so it kind of gives you like a little bit more negative space. Like
Mm,
there's some, kind of negative space because there's a little bit longer of a pause you should have it, with the period, right?
right.
But they're all end stopped. Some things don't alter with time. The first kiss, the first death, the sorrowful sweetness of rhyme. There's still some. She's almost kind of showing you the space, by making you pause, even though
Mm,
the lines are closer together. The rhyme is closer together, but it's almost in some ways it's a little bit further apart because of that negative space.
no, I see what you mean.
I know I
I
kind of
definitely.
went on there for a moment, but
No, I
um,
see what you mean. It's almost like to me. I kind of see it as like a. It's we're moving towards sort of experience.
mm, mm,
Kind of like there's because we're talking about the first kiss. The
mm-hmm,
first kiss is a good
mm-hmm,
example in the flighty sweetness.
yeah,
But then things begin to unfold in its appointed time. So
mm-hmm,
we have
mm-hmm,
violets and the snow and the laughter of children and the wholesome sweetness of rhyme.
yep,
But the last stanza being the shortest, we are introduced. Death kind of rears its head a bit.
yep,
It almost kind of seems like fall or winter.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
No matter what the world does, some things don't alter with time. The first kiss, the first death is still very sweet, but now we get into bittersweet, the sorrowful
yeah,
sweetness of
mm-hmm,
rhyme,
mm-hmm,
and how rhymes can describe, things that, while they're necessary, they are parts of life. They will sort of sap your innocence. So
yeah,
I see a
yeah.
move. I see a move from innocence to experience over
Yeah,
this
no, that's
poem.
good. Yeah. I also like how in that line, the first kiss, the first death, it's kind of it's almost like equal.
Mm,
The first kiss, and then the line's
mm,
broken in half. The first death, you know.
right.
life and death, sort of. And it reminds me too of, that saying, history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it often rhymes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, those last two lines are kind of reminding me of that.
Mm.
Where sometimes, and that's sort of that bittersweetness of sort of life um and rhyme. Because yeah, some things don't alter with time. One of those things being rhyme.
Right.
And it almost makes it seem, it's like no matter what the world claims or preaches or does, I mean, some things don't go away, rhyme being one of them.
Right. And even rhyme beyond just the words themselves. Rhyme is in sort of this characteristic of poetry, this this pattern, pattern,
Mhm.
sequence,
Mhm.
beauty,
Mhm.
things like that.
Yeah, and it also, kind of goes like there's almost like this sense there, like there's this feeling of like inevitability that's kind
Mm,
of going on here. Because we can't
right.
quite change, like this is like we're almost like there's almost like this like idea of like fate or um us being sort of subject to these things.
Hmm.
And so, there's like, so no matter, and the world is always kind of trying to fight against that inevitability.
Mm,
Um, so it's like no matter what the world claims, it's wisdom always growing. So it's said, you know,
right.
the world is constantly getting wiser, and yet some things don't alter with time.
Hmm.
It can't change anything, no matter what it preaches. Spring comes when it's ready. You know,
Right.
the violets open and the roses, snow builds its shining curves, you know. Even the laughter of children at play, that is something that's sort of inevitable, can't
Right.
be changed.
The wholesome sweetness of rhyme. We know the definition of wholesome as in, like sort of feel good, kind of this oh, everybody come together kind of kumbaya thing. But there's also the wholesome. The thing is
Mhm.
whole or sort of self-contained.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Like the world is sort of holy in it,
Mhm.
in a way. Um
Yeah. Or like a rhyming couplet is like a unit. It's like a,
right, right.
I don't want to say a perfect unit, but it's like a whole unit. Um, and saying the wholesome sweetness of rhyme after the children at play, because how do we talk about rhyme now? If you have a rhyming poem, it's like, oh yeah, it reminds me of, you know,
Dr. Seuss or something.
yes, yeah, something like that. And it's like, well, I don't know. It can also help with maybe death, not just,
Right, right.
you know, not just the
Exactly.
wholesome things.
And then that's the sorrowful sweetness.
Hmm. Hmm. It's
If
always
you
sweet.
right, right. Because I've even had similar thoughts, like going to a funeral or something like that. Even it's a very sad event, but the songs and the preaching is kind of there it kind of brings people together. Especially there'll be times where people, everybody might sing a song,
Mm,
at a funeral or something, and it's
yeah.
kind of I don't know. There is something sort of sorrowfully sweet about that.
Mm. Well, and I think that, also like an elegy,
Hmm.
often, or an ode is the romantics we're talking about her being sort of a neo-romantic, those are gonna often, be rhyming poems.
Hmm.
And like, it seems like rhyming poems are appropriate for children. They're appropriate for, funerals, for death, for marriages. Like these are the times when we kind of um, say like, yeah, it's okay to have some rhyming here. If we're gonna,
Hmm.
if someone's going to say a poem, like no one wants like like a, like free verse, like, yeah, I don't,
No, I
we're,
get what you mean
yeah,
when
yeah,
in those emotionally taxing times, we
mm,
want a poem that is accessible and kind of rock and has that rhyme and has that there's something about the rhyming word that kind of exalts texts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of what we go for in those trying times. Even we don't, kind of the free verse, the something like that, the high minded, some sort of the the academic, more academic poetry, that kind of wouldn't cut it, you know.
Yeah. No,
Even
absolutely.
even
Yeah.
you said a mother's, something Mother's Day. You're not going to give your
Right.
your mom some sort of
John Ashbery
dense,
or something.
some
Right.
sort of dense,
Yeah.
4 or
Right.
5 long page
Mhm.
long poems.
Mhm.
You know,
Right. Yeah. No.
you want
Y
something accessible. You want something that is
Mhm.
communicative.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and even gave it to her to, sit out on the back porch and, kinda read
Right.
back there when she's got bird feeders and watches birds and stuff, which is, like, what Mary Oliver's doing, you know?
Right. My mom does that as well. Kind of
Mhm.
reminds me of Ecclesiastes, to everything there is a
Mm.
season, you know.
Right. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
time for that. There's time for us to, like, oh well, these 4 lines here are, represent this, and there's time to get more technically involved with
Right.
poetry, but there's also
Yeah.
time to realize that this is meant to be enjoyed. We're meant to enjoy ourselves.
Right.
Like, we
Mhm.
don't want to, we don't have to
Yeah.
walk on our hands and knees across the
Right.
desert for hundreds of
Yeah.
miles.
Right. Yeah, no, I
um
mean, the same is true for, music as well. It's
right.
like, hey, it's fine to listen to Radiohead in your headphones, but when we're at the, summer barbecue, maybe put on,
Okay,
I don't know,
computer.
just something, right? Or, just something else,
Let's
right?
put on In Rainbows at the summer
Right,
party.
right, yeah. Like,
You
we're all
guys
trying to
just
have a
don't
good,
get it. You
like, we're
guys just
trying
don't
to,
understand.
yeah. I'm trying to have a good time here, okay? Yeah,
Shout out to Radiohead, but we
right.
want to listen to Who Let the Dogs Out at the summer
Exactly,
party.
exactly. Yeah, put on Smash Mouth, okay? Let's
Yeah.
all,
Right,
yeah.
right.
But no, so yeah, and but going with that, there is still some technical, um,
Yeah, yeah.
I think
No,
prowess being shown here a
right,
little,
right.
even in your poem as well.
Oh, exactly. And I mean, that's why I said the use of rhyme in this poem, tasteful, tasteful. Like the way the rhyme is almost hinted at. And when you
Mm-hmm.
get to that second stanza, you almost wonder, is it gonna return? Or
Yeah,
you kind
yeah,
of wonder, is it gonna
mm-hmm.
return? Is the
Yeah,
meaning, the feeling gonna
yeah,
return?
right, yeah,
And when it does, it's almost like, wow. But then when it returns in the last stanza, it's almost like it returned, it came back around. But
yeah.
this time it's a little,
Right, yeah, exactly.
bitterness
Yeah,
there.
right, yeah, yeah. Yep,
So this is
yeah,
how you can, like, this, and you mentioned villanelles earlier.
mhm,
This takes that consistent, the repetition,
mhm,
almost that hypnotic quality of the villanelle, and
mhm,
just gives you little tastes of it
mhm.
to make
Right,
its point.
yeah, and that's why, if you read through, any Mary Oliver books or, several of them, you'll notice, like, every single one is written in every poem is in, a different form. Like,
Mm,
every poem visually looks different. Everyone takes on its own kind of characteristic. And, she's written, I think she published like over 20 books. She
right.
wrote
This is
for a long time, right?
extremely prolific, especially
And,
for a poet.
right. And so I think that, you can't quite get to a poem like this without, being, without doing that, without writing in so many different styles. And that's why I think it also reminds me, um, of a villanelle, because I know that she's familiar with villanelles and has written them. But to be able to kind of take the essence of a form.
Right.
Um, yeah,
And I think
I
that's
re-
where we're
yeah,
kind of getting in a lot of 21st century poetry.
mm,
It's almost like, if people from your was it Terrence Hayes,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
even Tracy K. Smith,
mm-hmm,
Billy Collins,
right.
Mary Oliver.
Yeah, Billy Collins especially I think fits in this
Oh, for sure.
hinting
It
at form.
exactly.
Yeah,
The Terrence Hayes had the American sonnet.
right.
Um it's sort of like, what does this form do?
Mhm.
Why did this form come to be?
Right.
Can I sort of
Yes.
extract that and
Mhm. Mhm.
and apply it maybe in a slightly different way?
Right.
And
Right.
so, it has been said that the 21st century is the 20th century in high definition. So
Mm.
I don't know, maybe in 21st century poetry, as we take some of these forms and kind of see
Right.
if we can pull something
Yes.
out of it and
Right.
hint at it, and
Mhm. Mhm.
there's a dimension of creativity there for sure.
Yeah, yeah, right. Not completely leaving them behind, not but also not fully embracing them. We're kind
Hmm.
of having to kind of marry modernism and postmodernism.
Right. Exactly. Couldn't that is definitely a project going on in
Yeah,
different ways in
yeah,
academia and the
right,
internet and
right,
the streets.
right. Yep. And yeah, so I make a joke there. That is, that and that is my obviously my great life's work.
To marry modernism and postmodernism.
Hmm.
Do we
Yeah.
dare?
Right. Yeah, but hey, man, I mean, I think those are two pretty good examples. I'm hoping that anyone who watches this and is maybe familiar with Mary Oliver, if you're someone who scoffs or has lifted up your nose, or maybe even someone who's enjoyed it, and hasn't, looked deeper into it. I hope that you get to see it in a new light.
I do as well. Mary Oliver is this we've said neo-romantic, we've brought up transcendentalism, we brought up the Eastern religions. Hey, this is someone who is accessible. It's
Hmm.
available to you.
Right.
Reach out, grab the book,
Hmm.
knock,
Hmm.
and the door will be open. You
Right.
cannot read Mary Oliver book and just be like, you're gonna there's something in there
Hmm.
that you're gonna
Hmm.
like. I
Yeah.
mean,
Something. Right.
she's
Yeah.
the amount that she's written over the and this is a prolific poet. I mean,
Hmm.
kind of even I would say maybe even quietly prolific. I mean, there's I don't know, there's something odd about poetry. How it seems like people's fame waxes and wanes a bit, and
Right.
like you don't hear about a poet for a while, then you hear a lot
Hmm.
about them, and
Right, right.
people go back and forth. So I mean, hey, this is if I could talk about Mary Oliver, I'd say, hey, knock and the door will open. If
Yeah,
you knock, this
absolutely.
door will open.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, to just comment off that, I think that poetry in a lot of ways is like wine. And that when you open up a bottle of wine, it tastes different as you go about and drink it. As you go about through your lifetime and you read poems, you're going to take something different from it at each point in your life, depending on, you know, what you've gone through, right? And so I think
Right.
that Mary Oliver is one of those poets that, that's why, and with other poets, it waxes and wanes because as a society, as a culture, as a person, we're going through different things at different times. And so, we can take something new or different or, see it in a different light, at each stage of the journey. Mm. And
There
yeah,
it
hey,
is.
hopefully Mary Oliver, hey, I don't know, with rise in AI, cell phones, people being addicted to their phones, Mary Oliver saying, hey, she's not saying get off that phone. She doesn't
No.
have to, you
Right.
know. She's saying go outside and the world will call to you.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right. Well, hey, do you have any final you want to say anything, final on Mary Oliver?
No,
I
I think
think
it's
I
all
think we
been
kind
said.
of I think we put a bow on it. I think we
Right.
put a
I
bow
do
on it.
too. Yeah.
Cool. Well, hey, this has been Verse Take, and of course, let me very quickly, while James distracts you, I'll pull up our notes so I can say who is. So look at James, he's dancing. Isn't that funny? He never does that. Okay. So next next week we have Shelley. So now we really
Oh,
truly are getting into the romantics.
and
Um,
Shelley was mentioned as one of her favorite poets, Mary Oliver. So
yeah, I mean, and she talks about birds, I mean, Shelley talks about birds.
She does
So
indeed, indeed,
so,
amongst
you
other things.
yeah, so, cool. Well, hey, I'm looking forward to getting into that, and, yeah, we'll see you all in, 2 weeks.
All right. Take care, everyone. I'm James,
Justin.
and this has been Verse Take. See you guys later.